Dave Attell, he brought his own little chair, everybody.
I want to thank you guys all for coming out. Sorry about the cane. My mom broke her hip. I'm road testing it for her. So, should I jump over here, Ron? Probably better.
No, stay on the cane chair.
You think
Now
so?
that now follow that bit as long as you possibly can. First of all, I didn't even know a cane chair existed.
Hold on. Sorry. The safety light.
It's a safety. We can't cure cancer, but we came up with a cane chair.
Give it up for China.
China, everybody.
We need them. They know what they're doing over there.
Well, I got to tell you, Dave, ask me anything. I'm here to answer all your questions, anything you need to know.
I'm going to thank this crowd for waiting on a street in this heat. I mean, I wouldn't even wait out there for methadone. I mean, that's really comedy fanaticism.
Dude, I always have methadone if you need it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And I'm going to just say something to young people. Start with methadone. Skip heroin.
Yeah.
Methadone is a fine way to spend the weekend.
Well, you know that bridge where it goes from like Queens to fentanyl?
Yeah.
Next stop, fentanyl.
Here's the other thing about methadone. You will save money on cigarettes. You can smoke one cigarette for 3 fucking days. It's so relaxing.
It's good. Yeah, it's a budget.
Yeah.
And, I assume you guys have been here for at least a day by now, right? There you go. See, at this festival, you don't need a clock. You can just kind of smell what time it is. It's getting ripe.
The great thing about Skankfest is they save so much money on stage lighting. This is the darkest interview I've ever been in my life. Dave has his own spotlight. They operated on my pancreas with something that looked very much like that.
This is the beauty of it because, I love Ron. Ron is not only a great broadcaster, but he's super funny. I followed him last night at the Comedy Cellar. So.
Yes. Well, some people would say you didn't follow me at the Comedy Cellar, Dave, but that would be a lie.
I was drowning in your wake at the Cellar.
Well, to come together for here at Skankfest, which, by the way, wouldn't happen without Christine. Big applause for Christine.
Yes, Christine knows what she's doing.
Really, Christine and Rebecca, their job is to take Louis J. Gomez's fever dreams and somehow turn them into reality. Oh, you got your little iced coffee there, too. Why not? Mm-hmm. You should have put your chair up, and then you could have kept it there.
I think for me, because, with my thing, we should all be able to smoke in here. That's the way I think it. But...
isn't there a law where if it's part of the act,
right? Exactly. If it's
I'm ready to go when you are, because I really wouldn't mind not coming back here next year.
Yeah.
So if we could fuck this up, it might be good for everybody. I mean, I can't believe that this festival has gone on and there's been 0 deaths. I'm kind of disappointed.
I would just like to be the plumber that's called in after the fest leaves. Like, I got to pull a phone charger out of a toilet.
It would be those old guys at Times Square that used to come in and mop up jizz.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was one of the few jobs I missed. That was definitely... That was another one that was just passed from father to son. That was not like... You never saw an advertisement for that.
Yeah. That's the problem with unions. That there's still that special preference. Yeah.
I don't know how this interview is going to go, but I will promise you at the end, I will fight this other guy with a cane. All right. We'll do it for healthcare.
Both, yeah. He's faking. I can tell, yeah. He just wanted a good seat.
All right.
He got the park out front, too.
Now he took us back to Brooklyn in the 90s. Now...
If these people could see, this is fucking hilarious what he's got going on. But we're sitting in the dark.
That's all right. There's really 2 shows here. There's the VIP season 3-day pass people, Skankfest, and then in the back, the people who just kind of just came in thinking like, you know what, maybe we can buy some pot here. I don't know.
It's really fun to have a pit for an interview. It never normally happens, but there are people standing throughout the interview.
It puts a lot of pressure on it, that's for sure.
Now, you brought up the job thing. Would you have been able to do any real job outside of comedy? Would you have?
I've had a lot of real jobs.
Yeah.
I worked in a bridal shop.
See,
my parents had a bridal shop. I worked there. I want them to have a mini bike, fucking, beer distributor, but they had a bridal shop, so I was working there.
So what was your job there
What was my job? To clean up afterwards.
Oh, okay.
I also was the head of shipping and receiving.
Sweet.
But when you work in a family business and things are going bad, you can end with a beating, all right? That rarely happens at Home Depot, where your boss pulls you outside and just shoves you against the wall. He goes, "You're a loser."
What's a big mistake you could make working at a bridal shop? Where could it go wrong?
Well, the beauty is you get to see, this was in the 80s, so it was before Bridezilla and all those different reality shows. So you got to see kind of like the drama of brides and their maids coming in and getting their gowns. And then, it was Long Island, so there was a lot of, Vinnies and Tommies and Paulies and who fucked who, kind of thing. A lot of eye rolling from the maid of honor, like, yeah, he's going to stay with you, right. But the best thing was the tuxedo rental, because that would be like almost like a treasure chest where you get the tuxedo back after like prom night or something like that, and there would be like a condom and like a velament in there, or just some kind of weird prize,
Yeah.
And I had a lot of weird, just like kind of jobby jobs.
Like what else? What else did you?
The most real job I ever had was I worked at Discovery Channel in the research department. I was totally underqualified for this incredibly number-oriented gig. You ever have one of those jobs where every day you think it's your last day? So when you go to lunch, you take everything off your desk with you. You're like, I don't think I'm coming back here.
Yeah.
There's no way after what I did this morning here, they would have me back.
Right.
So I did that kind of job, and I worked as a waiter. I guess my big fun job was I was an assistant to a wedding photographer. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did that work?
I don't know. You remember when you would hire a guy to like videotape something?
Right.
It was like in those times. It's like ancient now. How was it? It was great because there would always be like a drunken brawl or something like that you want to catch. But this was like at least a decade before TMZ or World Star Hip Hop. So it was just like, what a waste, Like all that great drama, just such a waste.
Now, did you get that job because of your bridal experience? Is that how that worked out for you?
I think you're seeing a theme here. You're right. And then I'm trying to think of another good one I had. One time I picked weeds out of a parking lot. That was a good one. That was a good one. And I got that through a friend of a family guy. Can you imagine that? That sounds like something like a work release job. But had some really shitty jobs.
Hey, look, Mr. Attell, I think I found something for your boy. How is he at yanking weeds? And remember, this is going to be in a parking lot, so, head on a swivel.
I was pretty good on it. I'm not going to underplay it. I was probably the best guy there. I mean... And then...
I can't picture you, you glossed over it, but Dave Attell... as a waiter, I just don't think that you would care if everybody's okay over here. Or if they need anything, I don't think you'd be coming back and I fill that water for you.
Yeah, I was at a seafood restaurant. That's even harder.
Yeah.
All that lobster and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, you guys into people touching your food? Like we have to crack the lobster open for the guy. I would just like basically like, you want something else? I was like, forget it.
What about a burger that's easier?
Yeah.
You don't want to struggle with this lobster.
Yeah, no, I was in all those service industries. Yeah. And then I guess my one, transition to the comedy world would be I was working at the Discovery Channel, and then at night I was doing open mics, and then I got a job at the Improv in Hell's Kitchen. That club is now at Don Giovanni's, by the way, so you can go there. They have a little plaque up there. It's pretty fucking sad. But that's where I did. I was the doorman there, and they'd let us go on late at night.
So what made you make this? What made you go, okay, I do have a dream of comedy?
That's... I don't know. I think it was like one of those things where, like, you know, you start doing the open mics, and, like, you realize that, like, you know, this is my life, and I have a job during the day, and if it's just going to be this, then that's okay, because I'm not that good at comedy, and I don't believe I deserve to get paid for comedy, and I'm just hoping to get better at it. And then, you know, I guess what you could say is, like, you get that point where you're like, the material is starting to click, and you know, you start getting more stage time. And after that, I was like, I guess this is what I'm doing. But I would say I didn't commit to comedy until I was in my late 20s. I always thought I was going to join the Navy. I thought I was going to do a million other things. I was like, I'm going to open a bar in the Philippines. I was like, I had a lot of young guy thoughts, you know?
Sounds like somebody watching McHale's Navy.
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
I know what
to
could
fly a
lead.
helicopter and move to Hawaii, Magnum PI style or something, you know?
Yeah.
But I wanted it like some kind of adventurous life, you know?
Right.
And traveling and stuff like that. But comedy, like once I like got into it, it became fanatical, like with stage time, like just couldn't get enough, you know?
Were you the funny kid in your neighborhood, though?
No.
No.
I was not the funny kid. I was not the fucking charming guy. I was none of those things. I was the guy. I was actually like, think of it like in terms of responders, like first responder, second responder. I was like a fourth responder. You know, I was like, everybody had been laughed and they clear out, and then I'd show up like, hey, what happened? Anything good? Are we getting drunk this weekend? But a big club for me in the beginning was, I'm from Long Island, and there's got to be some Long Island people here, right? There you go. Governor's on Long Island. Do you know?
Yes, it's pretty famous for being a rough club.
It was definitely a regional, local club. Like, you know, you had to have all those references about Long Island.
Yeah,
you know?
that's what they liked.
Yeah, and you were considered almost like like a refugee if you came from New Jersey. Like, what the fuck? Who is this guy talking about diners we don't know about? You know, that kind of...
That's where you lose the audience.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never heard of that diner.
Bruce Springsteen, it's Billy Joel out here.
Right, yeah. That's the great fight that no one but people from Jersey or Long Island cares about. There's no way to tell those people, look, you're arguing, but they both suck. There's no...
Wow. Yeah, so that was the I guess late '80s. So
right,
there you go.
But that thing at some place it clicked for you that you were going to stay in this business.
I really, honestly, I'm not underplaying it. It's like I was so bad at comedy for so long that I could never see myself making a living at it, and I was like, I better get a regular job. But like I couldn't stop doing it. It became like an obsession. It really was hitting these open mics all the time. And the open mics, I think, eternally will always be a suck. But there were open mics back then that were like beyond what you see. Like there was a place called Mostly Magic. Do you know this place? Anybody? Well, go to like Getty Images or something like that, and like it was a club.
Everyone's checking their phone right now, Dave.
It was a club for magicians. Okay,
mostly
magicians. On the summer solstice, they let a ventriloquist in to appease the gods of the forbidden voice, and we would go on there all the time, and like just kind of. It's hard to make a magician laugh. That's all I'm going to say right now.
So you would go up in between magicians.
Well, I don't think they had that many magicians. So just basically be like one magician and then his posse. And then we would all just like keep going till the crowd left. And that's how it worked.
Yeah, that's how it is.
That's what I like.
Well, but you ended up enjoying it. It wasn't depressing to you because a normal person would say, I'm stopping this. I'm not going to do this.
Oh, you mean with comedy?
Yeah, doing comedy at the very beginning.
There were times where I bombed so hard, I prayed. I was like, thank God I have a day job, or else I would kill myself right now.
Yeah.
It's like, the only reason why I'm not killing myself is because I know I have to go in at fucking 9 in the morning and Xerox something.
Right.
Like, I have a purpose. I'm not underplaying it. It's a sad life. You guys know it.
But I mean, the bravery of doing open mics, it still kills me. I mean, fuck boot camp. When you see what the open micers go through,
right,
and it goes on for years and years and years.
I think they're better now because they start on the web, like they have their own, like like they do their own thing, and then by the time they get in front of a live crowd, they're not as nervous. I was so nervous all the time, really incredibly nervous, and it wasn't like today's crowd. I mean, like if you were nervous, they saw that as blood in the water, weakness, and they dumped a load of shit all over you, and it was a bad scene. I mean, like they actually would like it better if you were nervous. So that was it was basically like prison. You know what I'm saying? I was definitely,
Well, you are, and I know that you're a humble guy and you play it down, but you're the comedian that comedians love the most. And
nice.
it is true. Well,
that's really nice. Thanks.
And I see it at the Cellar where comics will come down to watch your set, and these are some of the famous clean comedians who, their audience probably wouldn't be into you at all. But those comics are. I always find that to be amazing.
Yeah, it's good to have the people who love you who don't buy tickets. I think that's great. It's always good to have.
Yeah.
No, that's really nice, Ron. And I'll say it. The audience, especially from the Legion of Skank podcast, you guys have basically found each other, and you are now the new comedy audience of the next 10 years. And I mean, I'm on the way out, and I'm on the way out of the business, and the next guys are gonna fuck all of you.
All right.
I just signed a deal with ARP. I'm out of here.
Hey, I just want to say this. Calm down, or we will turn the lights on.
Yeah.
And then watch them scatter like fucking cockroaches. Everybody here has a warrant. We know that's why they do this with the lights.
No, we wanted to... You know what the theme is? Kind of like Hotel in the Catskills about to close. That's what I feel like. We had some great times here, Marty. Do you remember the Finkelstein bat mitzvah? Oh, those were the years. But, no, I mean, it makes me feel good that I'm a part of something that I know will not be watered down or filtered no matter where it goes, and that's thanks to you guys. So, at the end of the day, there's a comedy audience for this.
Right. Yeah, there's a kind of from our vantage point, a purity that the skanks are doing that we all realize is probably going to end up in indictments. You know what I mean?
There's some of
We've been around long enough to know this does not end well.
It's funny now how when you talk about doing stand-up and how stand-up for me was my goal. I really wanted to be like Sam Kinison or Bill Hicks. I wanted to be
dead.
Power. Yes, a dead man. I wanted to be... And I was thinking with my career, I'd be like a John Doe, fished out of the Hudson. With an address in my hand, mostly magic. Where is that? Let's start the investigation there. No, I really wanted to be like a power headliner. That was always my goal. I was I wanted to go out there and throw down and really mix it up. And that was that was my all I wanted out of it. And everything else has been gravy. And I've been pretty lucky that way. So
you are 100% in the league with Kinison.
I won't accept that. That's too nice. That's really too nice.
Yeah.
Sam Kinison, you know comedy better than me.
Yeah.
So he was really
Yes, I do, but
he was one of a kind.
Yeah, he was one of a kind, but so's Dave Attell, and I know.
Well, my favorite comic.
Yeah.
My favorite comic, since I've met a bunch of great comics, is Doug Stanhope, who you guys know. And I feel like I feel like he also, because back in the day when we would party and all that stuff, I was like, he is the guy who is like the only pure real comic now. Like the rest of us, we've all like had to clean it up and all that kind of stuff. But he never really did that. And he did his own thing. He found his own audience. And I always felt like that's really the way to do it. He's kind of the template for everybody who really wants to be like a balls to the wall real comic.
Yeah, no doubt. There's no doubt about that. But for you, and we're bringing up the fact that comedy has been somewhat watered down. You know what I mean? There has been a thing where at some point, if you want any kind of mainstream stuff, you're not, it can't be like Dice where you get to be like that and still get to host Saturday Night Live or whatever.
Sure,
it's going to be different now. But for you, there's no other way, right? There's no other way to do this.
I don't think I'm particularly as dirty as I was years ago. Like, I have one CD. It's called Skanks from the Memories. And that CD is the one that everyone comes up to me and they go, hey, this joke and that joke. And I don't remember all the jokes because it's been years now. And I'm like, wow, that's like considered hate speech now. It's almost it's almost like quoting Hitler,
Yeah.
And they were just jokes, and you can hear the crowd laughing. That's not an effect. I mean, that was where the base of comedy was and what you could talk about. And now I don't apologize for any of that stuff. I love those jokes. I love that the crowd loved them too. And I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if I lose, a fucking gig over it because like those were the jokes, and it took me a long time to write them. Those were like, my little babies. I love those jokes,
Yeah.
But now I've grown up, and I'm like, whatever. Instead of, talking about fisting, now it's, I don't know, real estate.
So
an adult fisting.
But if you write a joke now that you think is going to blow up, you're like, this isn't fucking worth it.
Right, exactly. Right? It's always about the hole you have to dig yourself out of in comedy. And that's like, I work with Jay a lot, Jay Okerson. And when he was opening, if he can't, I can't believe it even now. It's been so many years, but he used to open for me, and we go on the road. And now Jay is like probably one of the strongest headliners I've ever seen. And he, you could just tell like how like, his style is also like built out of adversity. Like he started out in these Philly open mics, like really hardcore, super how to bring it kind of shows.
Jay didn't see a white person until 7 years into his career.
I really didn't want to say it, but yes. He's kind of the Tarzan of comedy, if you know what I mean. He was raised in a jungle. Without the abs. He's kind of Tarzan.
By the way,
Tarzan without the abs and the singing ability.
Jay, if you don't call your next special the Tarzan of comedy, we're all going to be let down here.
So I always admired that because, I always felt like the harder it is, like the stronger you get,
Right.
But now, like with the way things are with comedy, I second guess everything. And when I work with, and that's like a big name drop festival. Sorry, Ron, but when I work with Jeff Ross and we do the big mic stuff, a big name came out. So Jeff has no filter. He definitely runs towards all the things that will, like taboo shit.
Right.
And I love that about him. I love that he does it and he runs at it and like he'll take the groan and like make it funny and that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of like the new comedy. Like, it's kind of sad, like back in the 90s, like now in comedy, there's a lot of explaining what you're trying to say or like apologizing in advance for what you're going to say.
Yeah.
That's boring if you,
Just like when you have to say to an audience, give me a minute before you make up your mind. But I'm going to talk about children and you're like, that's not the way to set up a joke.
Right. It's very whatchamacallit.
But I think that
Sorry.
No, I'm with you. But I do think that you and I have been on a separate but parallel trip to not giving a fuck. You know what I mean?
Don't give a fuck.
And that's the only piece that you can have as the years go by,
Yeah, no, I've never had more fun in comedy than now. Mm-hmm. Except, like, right now, it could be a lot better. I mean, like, right now.
In this room.
There's something about a disco ball not spinning that really is just sad. Like, I've never been there, but I'm probably thinking at the comedy festival in Chernobyl, it looks exactly like this, but with probably wild animals like elk and shit like that.
Well, we were trying to set up a global warming thing here to let people know this is what happened when the sun burns out, and there's nothing ever, This
Anyway,
yeah.
It's fun to do these sets. It's fun to go out with the other comics. It's also really fun, like Bumping Mike style, where we just bring anybody who walks in the room on the stage,
right.
Whether it's the audience or these other comics that we know, and bring it up and like riff around with them. And people always ask, they go, how much of that was riffing? How much of it was planned? And I would say it's 50-50.
Yeah.
And like, even though we have some jokes that we throw at each other, you never know how they're going to fucking connect together,
I'm totally shocked that 50% of that show is planned.
Well,
I'm like, how did
I
that?
thought you were going to say, I only thought 40% of that show was funny. So I playing the averages here.
Yeah. But that came together kind of organically. It was just you guys fucking around. And
right.
It was, I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, like you said about Jeff, that he's been able to take some of this stuff to Netflix. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
he's an awesome
he does
producer.
have corporate backing.
He does.
Which is crazy.
He was the one who pushed the show through because I just thought it was a goof show. And he's like, we got to get it to Montreal, and then we got to get it in front of the Netflix people. And then, they gave us some airtime like that. So.
Yeah.
But, that's where that is. So, yeah, that's my biggest credit.
It's your biggest credit.
I guess, right now.
Now, the funny thing is the industry always wants you to do other things, right? Do you remember any
Sure.
of the kind of pilots they pitched to you? Or
I was in a pilot, and I remember it specifically because the pilot was going so bad, and I was like, how could this get any worse? And then Mitch Hedberg died. And I was like, wow. No, we were all in the parking lot. It was like me and Bobby Lee and a couple other guys, and we're like, this is not going to make it.
Yeah.
And then he died, and I was like, oh, shit.
right. What was the pilot about?
I don't know, ensemble cast.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I really don't remember. All I remember is like I had too many lines. I'm not a good actor. I was like, why don't we give these lines to these actor types? And I just come in and go like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like J.J. Walker style.
Yeah,
or something.
right.
Like
Less is better.
something's cooking. There's something. I just wanted to laugh, get out.
And if Hedberg doesn't die, there's people wearing something cooking T-shirts
Yes.
on the fucking Wildwood Boardwalk. Oh, that's hilarious, man.
But I'd say the thing that I'm least proud of would be the Gong Show remake. And
Yeah.
that was another thing where it's like I had done the Insomniac show and we were all done. And they're like, hey, they want you to host this Gong Show thing and you can make it blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, as long as I get to make it blah, blah, blah. And then it turned out I couldn't do anything to it.
Yeah.
It was like the original Gong Show is like almost kind of like set the way it is. But at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, people with these goofy talents, everybody wants to make fun of it. Meanwhile, every show now is about like singing or dancing or something like that. So,
Right.
there's a lot of talent in this country. So you can't make fun of it
Right.
anymore,
Yeah, that's what we're known for in America.
That
Talent.
was pretty sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I've hacked it up and hoarded up pretty good too,
Yeah, of course.
I think so, like there's gigs that I took for the money for sure, But at the end of the day, those are always the worst gigs. It's always like the one that you're like, I would do it for no money. That would, that would be good. So
Brian Regan was telling me that he will do the corporate gigs as long as his manager doesn't tell him that they're happening.
Really?
And he's just driving him to him like a dog to the vet. You know what I mean? Like, he just starts looking around. Where are we going? What is this?
But doesn't he know, like, there's a fucking
An
corporate
empty-
gig when there's a picture of a new sneaker coming out next year?
Hey, it's great to have everybody here. We're all excited about this sneaker. But yeah, I think that the industry loves you, but they never know what to do with you. That's why Bumping Mics has been
Oh, yeah, it's good, yeah.
a happy spot for people.
I like it when it's riffing and stuff like that. Like, there's a couple of great shows where you could do it. Like, when I work with Amy, Amy Schumer, like on her movies, it's basically just, here's what we need to talk about. And Judd Apatow's really good that way, too, where it's just like lets you kind of riff until you hit funny. And that's really cool. That's always fun to do. And Amy's classic. She's great. She can act. She can do the jokes. She can do everything. And it's just a lot of fun when you get to go back and forth with people like that,
Now, what happened between you and her, I guess, early in her career, that she would end up naming her child middle name Attell?
Well, I have to say this right now. I was like, why would you do that? And then she's like, I'm honored, of course, but I'm also frightened
Right.
for the kid. You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
And then my niece and nephew were like, well, what about us? And I'm like, but yeah, that was very nice. She's always been cool to me. And, you know, you guys get it. You guys see what's going on. Like, you know what, like what's scripted and what's not. And the unscripted stuff is kind of where I feel the most comfortable. Like that's Insomniac style, which is what these guys grew up.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And I'll say it now because I never talk about the show. I never talk about it. But this is kind of a safe space, I guess you will. Bring in the sympathy dog. I didn't know it was as popular as it is until I met all of you guys. You guys were so young, watching it at home. I didn't know that the audience was that young watching it because when it was on, you know, we was always struggling to like promote it and everything like that. I didn't know in some trailer park in America, these young kids were watching it, dreaming.
You see the influence that you've had on a generation that they all come to Skankfest. That's hilarious, but it is true, Dave. It is true. And tons of young comedians who, you know, are like, they saw that show and honestly said, hey, I could easily do that. You know?
Oh, that's true. Well, the guys who helped me put it together, like Nick McKinney was the executive producer, super cool, and it took a lot of work to put that out. And I really didn't know. I really did not know that it was that popular until years and years later. And that's the one people come up to me with all the time. So, you know, see? People call it Up All Night mostly, but it goes by a lot of names. You know?
Which is always...
Night Owl, Drunky Bird. In Kyrgyzstan, it's known as Wandering Jew, Midnight.
It's really great for branding when people don't know the actual title of a show. But
let me ask you this. Like, when you were doing comedy, what kind of show did they throw at you? Like, what did they do?
Well, you know, the second I started making radio money and I had, you know, my own club, I was just like... really at that point where there was like a couple of game shows that obviously were ridiculous and stuff like that because they always looked for broadcasters to, you know, like, hey, you guys could host a show. But not these shows. No one could fucking host the horrible pilots that they would throw at us, And most of them were just rip-offs of other shows.
Other shows, exactly.
Which is, oddly, anyone, like, if you've watched TV... you could probably be an executive in TV because they have the same kind of ideas as anybody. You know what I mean? Something worked before. Let's rip that off. And well, now they just bring the game shows back.
I'm all for it, like any kind of like where a comic gets to do something like that. Cause like sometimes the comic is the best host for that kind of shit. You know, like really honestly.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not throwing it out there, but I would do it.
Yeah.
Because I am doing a new show. It's a reality show. It's called Celebrity Hospice. And it actually takes place right in here, Ron. Right in this room. In the saddest room. This is where you ballroom dance with your broken dreams.
Please let me be the first contestant. And just let me drift off into whatever afterlife that there is. Where you're all waving goodbye, and then you can hand out prizes to people as they watch.
Yeah, I love those reality shows. Like, you know, I like... it's a lot of work to do one, especially if it's, you know, moving, traveling, and all that kind of stuff. I give Anthony Bourdain a lot of credit. Like, he really did have, like, a special credit, and he really did connect with, like, a worldwide audience. That's for sure. And... you know,
it apparently brought him a lot of happiness. Have you ever met Anthony before? Have you ever met Bourdain?
No, I never met him. No.
Really?
You'd be surprised how few celebrities I really know. Most of the celebrities I know were comics when I started. Like, you know, like Jon Stewart, he gave me so many great jobs. You know, over the years, he was always there for me. So I worked on his show. I worked on 2 of his shows, I think. I worked on... the show before The Daily Show, you know, and then I worked on another project with him, and he always was like, you guys don't know him as a comic, but he was such a strong comic, you know, he was really smart, and funny and good
By
looking.
the way, that show that he did before, I remember Peter Fonda being on that show.
Really?
And just fucking whacked out, just totally whacked out. And he had this long coat, and Stewart wanted to try it on, and you saw him just immediately throw his hand in his pocket and go, no one's trying on. And I'm like, he's got a fucking bindle in there. It was the best TV I've ever seen in my life. Just someone who's all coked up, realizing they're going to be exposed. That's the show we got to put together. You know, it's like part cops and, you know.
Part 8-ball.
Part 8-ball.
Speaking of which, this guy's going to do a bump. He's like, hey, I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
I think he looks like a cop, so don't do one with him.
I don't know. He has to go and turn the lights off at the vape shop. He's like, oh, shit. To go all the way to Long Island City now. Hey, you know, this is the good thing about comedy, though, is like, you know, like, you guys are younger, but like the big deal was doing Letterman. That was very big for me, you know, to get on Letterman and Conan and I'm sorry for smoking. But those were like the real big deal. That was like the thing of like, you know, you got to get on this show and you got to kill it. And, you know, you're always wondering like, did you kill it or not? You know, they ask you back and all that stuff. Now the new generation, I don't think any of those guys really do it or care about or whatever, but it was a big deal for us.
Yeah. Well, when they do it, it doesn't move the needle in their life at all. You know, and it used to be.
But it does shut up your family. Then they see you as a real comic.
Yeah. Because that's the closest your family comes to saying, like, how come you're not on that show?
It's your little jazz singer moment. Like, see, Mama, he's going to be all right. Look at him.
Yeah. What was the biggest thrill for you out of all those shows?
Well, the least biggest thrill was, and here's some great, like, when you talk about the back and forth of, like, dealing with the show, is they have, like, network standards. So here's a joke that you guys probably will know if you know my stuff, where it's just like, you know, if I need directions, I'll ask a one-legged man, because when you ask a one-legged man, he knows the easiest way to get there, because he's got one leg. I forget the whole joke. I'm sure you guys know it better, but they're like, we don't know about this one-legged man thing, you know, this wooden leg man thing. And I go, why? They go, it might insult some, you know, a viewing ship thing. And I go, well, how many pirates do you have with wooden legs listening to this, you know? I'm like, we're definitely past wooden leg, aren't we? So that was one of those. They're like, no.
No to the wooden leg.
Then another one was the, this is funny because my horse fucking joke, which has a life of its own, and other comics, I think, do it now. But I wasn't even allowed to do that joke for the military. Like when I did the USO tours, they were like, this horse fucking joke, we don't know about it. And the whole thing is, I'd fuck a horse because you always have a ride home. That's just an easy joke. It's an easy joke. I remember the day I came up with it. There was no horse fucking involved. It was just like, I was like, wow, I'm pretty clever. I mean, that's pretty clever. So I did the joke for the USO, and they're like, I don't know about this. And I go, what if I make it a camel? Huh? Try and get some of the locals. They're like, no. Bestiality. Most cultures are against it.
Yeah.
So that was another Letterman joke. So I think they were like, if I could pet one animal, it would be an animal, like a horse. Because then when it took all the fun out of the joke.
Right, you know, if I could pet one. I think it's funny that they train the military to kill, but they can't hear a horse.
They don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Like, hey, I could really take these kids into a bad direction.
But yeah, we used to battle that shit out all the time with them about what jokes you can do, what jokes you can't do. Now, Conan was my favorite because they would like, that's when I finally got the panel, which is where you get to sit down. And they always like when the comics come on because then they get to make fun of the actors and actresses where they're like, thank God you're here. We had an actor in here, so boring. Some story about going to a yoga class and blah, blah, blah. And you're always, like, in your mind, you're like, I bet you they say the same thing to the actors. Like, thank God you're here. We had this comic in here, like, bah, bah, with the punchlines and horse fucking. Thank you. Take us out of this with a yoga story, you know, like that kind of a thing. But when you panel, then you have to kind of, like, take your joke and go, like, you, the host will set it up. And you know, take it there. So Leno was the classic because he would be like, so, Dave, you've been traveling, and then you have to, like, do your traveling joke. And he goes, so what's next? And then, like, But then after a while, you're kind of like, fuck them. I'm just going to like jump 3 jokes ahead.
Right. Yeah.
So, Dave, you've been traveling? Well, as you know, my prostrate kicked out. What?
It is funny how, I mean, did they do that years ago? Because it's so apparent now that some, the host will just say, spiders, do you like them?
Right.
But it seems like it used to be more freewheeling back like in the 60s in the Carson.
Like a Carson time. You guys ever look at those YouTubes of Carson?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny how like you can put Burt Reynolds, Evel Knievel, and Lola Falana on one couch and it's still boring. You're like, wow.
You're
like,
know how
everyone's
many,
sitting around. I'm like, who are you waiting for, Buddy Hackett to funny this up?
I remember anytime I would see Lola Flana, I would just think they all must be fucking her because there's no reason to do this for a half hour.
A lot of innuendo.
Yeah, a lot of innuendo. Like, remember last night? But did you have comics when you were like a real little kid that you would look forward to catching on TV?
Yeah, like, I don't know about you, but like I grew up with those records, like Richard Pryor and George Carlin and Red Fox and all of those. I didn't discover like Lenny Bruce or any of those things till I was like way older.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like when you listen to these records, because you guys are comedy fans and you want to like see it, it's like every other joke won't make any sense, or you'd be like, what is this about? Why are these comics keep talking about it? But you got to kind of put it in the head of like back then of like, okay, this was before everything I've seen that's a ripoff of that now, and then you got to imagine John F. Kennedy's still alive. And then you got to get...
you got to go that far.
You got to go that far back.
You got to do a lot of work, yeah.
But I realized like some of that stuff like really had a big influence, not just on me, but everybody who like did comedy. Like Albert Brooks, that guy, like super clever.
Unbelievable.
Really great joke writer. Like the stuff he did. He was another guy who like didn't really fit like, square peg and a round hole kind of guy. And he kind of made his own scene,
Yeah.
I like that.
Because his jokes didn't even necessarily... His jokes, some of them worked better on the record than they did live.
Right.
Which was really, really weird.
I still love listening to comedy. Like, watching it is difficult, I think.
Yes,
but
I agree.
listening to it is really cool.
Well, I think that when you used to listen to comedy, your imagination would make this fucking amazing place. Like, I used to be really impressed with the audience when I was there. Like, these fuckers know where to go to hear this. But if you saw, like, if this was on TV, people would kill themselves looking at this.
It is pretty stiff in
dismal
here.
audience. I can't see a face here. It's really like
tough.
It's like a horrible dream.
It is pretty serious in here.
Yeah.
This is like one of those, like Maury Povich with a look back on the Where Are They Now?
Yeah, but they've never blanked out the audience's faces before. This is the first time like anyone in the audience would be arrested and the fucking guests will walk away free.
Here's another thing. Like, I worked at SNL, right?
Yeah.
And, like, I knew immediately it was a mistake to go there because they wanted me in as a writer and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know how to write any of these sketches, but I was, like, a big joke writer. And, like, Lorne Michaels went down to Stand Up New York. They had an audition, and, like, me and Jay Moore and a bunch of other people got tapped to be on the show. But everybody was a performer. I was, like, the writer because I was ugly. And, and the funny thing was, like, I was, like... I was just like in my stride, like just figuring out how to do like my own kind of stand up, and then it kind of got thrown in this other world. And like, it's really funny, like to be at the SNL like in the 90s or something like that. Cause it's like pretty much everybody there went to Harvard, or didn't go to any college at all, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of feel. But, at the end of the day, it was like, I feel bad that I didn't learn how to write a sketch, but I knew it wasn't my thing. Like I never really was like, damn it, I wish I was still thinking of, a sketch or something. Like, this wasn't my thing.
It wasn't something you could pull off.
No.
But at least you had that front row seat to Jay Moore's fucking breakdown.
He was my room. We shared an office together.
Yeah, I've talked to him so many times. And really, to me, Jay Moore should have been the biggest SNL star.
I totally agree with that. I really do. I really do agree with that.
Because
he was so good.
And he could just drop an amazing, the correct impression down at any time. He could make me, I love a stand-up who isn't just straight impressions. That can get boring. But you'll see Jay, the second he's in trouble, nice guy Eddie pops out and fucking kills the room. I mean, he's just so good at that. And I don't know how they didn't take a look at that and said, let's mold this.
They're so competitive up there. It's really like a whatchamacallit, like everybody's their own entity and like fight for that stage time or something like that. But Jay, I totally agree with you that he was built for that show, and that it's kind of it is kind of surprising that he did not dominate. They didn't let him. They didn't let him.
Yeah, he never.
But I was there when Chris Farley was there, towards the end. So it was like Chris Farley, is also like a naturally gifted comic and all that kind of stuff, and Phil Hartman and Mike Myers. So you see like three legends, in their venue, and like I'm just like a stand-up comic. So it's almost like I'm a seal watching dolphins swim. It's like I can go in the water. I can't keep up with any of you. But I also eat fish. See, I knew a nautical reference would take some of the mean out of this room.
Yeah.
Since this looks like the place where you get a job on a ship.
Yeah, it does. We could literally just fill this up with water and it would be an aquarium right now, and everybody would be totally happy. But you knew immediately when you got there, I shouldn't be at SNL.
I knew immediately that it was like not my scene, and it was like real show business, where like at the party, at the rap party, it was like Lauren and the host, and then like the players, and then this is like rings of show business, and then like me and the caterers, sitting on the final ring.
Yeah,
people are asking me for like beef or juice, like.
Luckily,
that was fine because that was not my scene. And I know people that's their dream to be in sketch comedy and stuff like that. So I give you a lot of credit because that was not my thing.
Well, that's what I think happened to Jay, and he's got this book out about the whole experience.
Right.
And you're in the book.
I had already been long fired.
Since he wrote that book. Yeah. But he did, and you just see the difference between you and him is he really did think, oh yes, this should be perfect.
And he was great. He was really great at that stuff. When we were in there the whole time, I could see the frustration for sure, in him. But like the shows I wanted to work on were like The Simpsons, because I was like, that's a joke show. And,
right.
Conan was great too because that was also like crazy stuff could happen. Like in the early days of Conan, like it was like, what do you feel like doing? It's like, I'm a masturbating dancing bear. All right, let's try it.
let's run with that.
That's cool. And SNL will be like, that's too jokey. You got to turn that into 12 minutes.
You also were part of that Caroline show, which had enormous fucking people that had done that show before they broke out, right?
Yeah, the Caroline's Comedy Hour.
Yeah.
And it was I was there for both hosts, Richard Janney, and then Colin Quinn. And Colin's another guy who has always been look up to him in comedy. He was the smartest, the fastest, the funniest. He was really like, in my mind, like that was like, if I could click my heels, I'd want to be him. And there was for a while there, it's like we all sounded like Colin because he was definitely like the coolest, But that was Richard Janney, who these guys definitely don't know who that is. For sure. They don't know.
What a great comic. He's kind of been forgotten, but he was doing everything at the same time.
Right.
He was at his most heat.
It's hard to like put him in a context for today because he was a power headliner. He was like 3 hours of nonstop. Like people were leaving there basically. Like, have you ever seen someone come out of a colonoscopy? All right. Just that kind of thing where it's like they're relieved they didn't find something, but they really need to lay down. And that was kind of the look on these people's faces. Exhausted. He was so good at it. And
but why do you think that you don't hear his name as much? You know what I mean? It always seemed to me like they put him in like the same kind of place that they put David Brenner in. Like somehow because he worked in a certain way, it was easier for him. But I always just thought he was a killer.
He was a killer, but for today's audience, I'm not so sure that like they would dig the whole thing of like what I liked about Richard Janney is that, first of all, he believed in himself. Like he really believed he was the alpha male of the room, and he was like he dominated the stage, and that was like for me like I was still like in comedy I was like second guessing everything I was saying, and like having to handle heckles left and right as I'm getting out my shitty jokes. He dominated them, and then he would tell the joke, tell it from another angle, do an impression on the joke, circle it back. He had all the different, I guess you could say, the nuts and bolts. Like he knew how to do all of that stuff. And I learned a lot about how to put a chunk of material together from watching him. And, if you guys ever really want to look at like long form bits of comedy, which might be considered kind of corny nowadays, those guys really know how to put together like a big chunk of material.
Right.
When you go like, what's your chunk on, whatever, my mother-in-law, like they would have like that 15 minutes and they go, I don't know, it didn't really work. 8 minutes through, the audience left me. I was like, you still had another 7 minutes of fucking mother-in-law material? It's crazy. Nowadays, people tell like 2 jokes and then they show slides. It's like...
Yeah, there is. But...
Let me show you a couple of memes I'm working on.
But you've never been like a storyteller on stage, and that's why I think a lot of people know, like, they know your comedy, but they're not sure that they know you. Right. I think like now a lot of comics want to say, this is who I am, my girlfriend is this. And,
right. Yeah, no, I used to consider that weak. When the guy was always like, I don't know what's going on with my girlfriend. I was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
But the good thing about punchlines is that, like, if it doesn't work, you can go to the next joke. If you're in a story and it's bombing, then you have to continue forward in this shitty fucking story.
Yeah.
And we've all seen it. You guys must have seen it. I mean, this is Brooklyn. It's probably happening right now somewhere. Probably over at the Greenpoint fucking Market Deli. There's
right.
Some storytellers tanking it, in the...
That is funny. They don't really need a bar to perform in. Like, I always thought, bar comic was the place that you went before club comic.
Right.
But now it's like, oh, there's a cheese shop that does this amazing fucking storytelling show that the audience yells out shit. And you're like, what? Why?
The worst type of comedy is outdoor comedy. I don't know if you guys have seen it, and like I've done it, and you've done it, and that really just like you realize that like comedy needs a ceiling.
Yeah, it
really
does. Because the jokes will float up into heaven.
We used to do a show for Comedy Central out in not in Central Park, but near the New York Public Library. You know that place? Okay. Yeah. They used to put up a stage and we'd do comedy there, comedy in the park, and like. Half the people sitting there knew there was a comedy show. The other half were just basically psychotic, free-range, homeless people. So you'd be doing your shitty jokes, and the homeless people would approach the stage with their jokes, and it was great. And then in your mind, you're like, how bad could this be? I have the high ground. And then you realize people are rooting for the homeless guy in the crowd. He won them over somehow.
Well, the problem for you is you were dressed the same.
Exactly,
so everyone's going, who's doing
That's where
what?
I learned to go on their side.
Yeah. Did you used to dress differently? Did you?
When you did TV in the 90s, you had to wear a blazer.
Yeah.
You had to wear a blazer or a suit or something like that to show everybody that you respect the show. Now you could basically just wear like flip-flops and a ball gag. It doesn't really matter.
A ball gag. So we're getting ready to wrap this up, but is bumping mics, this is something that's coming back, or is this...
I don't know.
You don't know yet.
According to Jeff, we're definitely going to do more shows, and I love Jeff for that because he's really optimistic. And you never know with Netflix. But I would say that right now we're on tour, and if you go to my Instagram or Jeff's Instagram, you can see the dates. And I know you guys are all over the country. That's what I love that Christine did, is that you guys... I was on the street in Chinatown, Ron, and 4 skankers came up to me, and I go, well, where are you from? They go, Iowa. And I go, really? And I was like, really? Are you here for Skankfest, or are you just runaways? I mean, are you just a couple of farm kids?
Yeah, right. I met a guy outside, and he says, this is my first time to New York, and I got news for you. You still haven't been to New York.
Right.
I don't know what fucking part of town we're in, but I never considered this. 10 years ago, this was a place to come and dump a body.
This was.
There's a comedy festival.
You never went here. You just ended up here. That's what it was. Like, that would always be your AA story. So somehow I'm in Greenpoint.
Yeah. Actually, everybody in the audience looks like they could use a meeting.
These guys are like juicers. I like that. They're booze.
Well, there's an old school element. I think is why we love this whole scene.
Yes.
There's we have friends like all you guys except for that they're dead. That's what we're saying.
Nice.
You know, you're like our friends that didn't make it, but you came back and created Skankfest together. And
Like in this, like I'm sure that they've shot other things here. Like, isn't this the theater a beatdown for Clockwork Orange? Isn't where they did it?
but raise your hand
very
if
delicate there.
raise your hand if you jerked off to that scene because it's
I know,
really
right?
sad that there's one right there. It's really sad when you find that out.
Yeah, but next Skankfest, that'll be its own little seminar. You
Yeah.
know, it's like. So this is pretty good, and I'll say, for those of you who like me, there's a ton of comics out there that I want you also to check out because, the comedy community, we're kind of like, more about comedy now thanks to podcasts and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's its own little world, and like what makes it great is good crowds, and you guys really are probably some of the most best. It's hard to say without getting a little bit emotional because I honestly thought, back in the day of comedy that I'm going to keep doing this, but no one's going to come see it. And now I realize that comedy is super huge, but is it as good? And now I realize that it's as good and probably going to be better than it was. So thanks to you guys.
Yeah.
To you guys. That has nothing to do with the comics. That has to do with you guys. So.
And Dave doesn't do a lot of these long form interviews. I just have to say that you're just fucking unbelievable. You're just so great at this. And there's his guy. Yeah, there's his cane. But I promised Dave that I would mention. Yeah, go ahead and hit that. I promised Dave that I would mention creepswithkidstour.com with Bobby Kelly, Jim Florentine, the one and only Rich Voss, and Ron Bennington is all going out this year. And that's for you, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
That's for you, buddy.
And I want to say, the last time I was at Skankfest, I got a great time doing a show, which I'll be doing tomorrow with Gilbert. I think we're both on that show.
Great, fantastic.
And Ron. But the last time I was here, I was on with one of my best friends, and that is Artie Lang, who we haven't seen for a while. He's taking care of himself, but I know you guys are always wishing the best for him. So
yes.
I'd like you to know that he's one of my favorite comics, too.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is the king of Skankfest. Let him hear it. The one and only Dave Attell. Dave Attell. Bumping canes.